do it live. Alright, Clash Tournaments, Next Level Streaming Deluxe here. Gonna be talking a little bit about what you should be doing in the terrible situation in the game that is when your opponent is beneath you. Alright, so when I say beneath you, I actually physically beneath you, not like they're worse than you are. So this little video is going to be about how to land and what options that you have when you're trying to get back to the ground. For the most part, the question is, why do you want to be able to land? Because in general in this game, if your opponent's underneath you, your options to play against them are significantly reduced. It's much more advantageous to be the one that is underneath your opponent as opposed to being above your opponent. For the most part, at least I can't really think of any characters in this particular game where they want to be above their opponent. If there is one, you should let me know so I can play that character, because let me tell you, I get juggled all the time because I'm pretty bad. So, in this situation, you got the character that we're playing and talking about, Zero Suit, and then you have our opponent down here. That'll be Diddy Kong, the best character in the game at the moment. And right now, you know, you have a lot of obstacles between you and getting to the ground. You got a couple platforms, and you got the Diddy Kong itself. So let's talk about the aerial state itself. Like when you're in the air, when you want to land, and pretty much when you do any sort of, I guess, comprehensive analysis on what your options are in order to achieve an objective, it's good to let's take a rundown of what options that you do have when you're in the air. So when you're in the air, obviously you have your aerials: up air, down air, forward air, or up air, back air, forward air, down air, neutral air. When you're also in the air, you have air dodge as an option, and we'll just kind of talk about air dodge, what it means. Air dodge is you have intangibility, or your opponent's not able to hit you. At the expense of afterwards, you're going to have a few frames of cooldown. I don't know the frame data yet on air dodging, but for the most part, it's very similar to spot dodge frame data, from what I understand. Until, of course, you hit the ground, where you go through all the lag in the world when you hit the ground. So air dodge in the air is pretty good. Air dodge onto the ground, by and large, pretty bad. We'll not really worry about that. So keeping going, if you're in the air, you also have access to your double jump, as I'm showing right here. You can only use your double jump once, obviously, until you hit the ground, and it refreshes your aerial resources, specifically just that jump. You also have at your disposal, when you're in the air, you can up special, you can side special, you can neutral special, and you can down special. So those are pretty much all the options. Some of the key things that we're going to take note of in this situation is the primary option that you do not have access to in the air. That is an extremely good option on the ground. It's called the shield. You don't have that in the air. That's pretty much, by and large, what makes this situation advantageous, because to be honest, if you could shield in the air, that would be pretty awesome, pretty ridiculous for the most part for a lot of characters. I think the closest thing I can think of in terms of shield, the closest thing, of course, is that air dodge giving you intangibility. But as we said, it's pretty similar to being able to spot dodge or roll, where you're able to put yourself invincible for a certain amount of time at the expense of you're committed to a certain time of not being able to do any of the other options. And of course, if you land, then you lag forever and you get hit really hard by stuff. Generally, as a problem, and I'm making this video because I see this a lot, especially at the mid and lower level of play, people just get into this idea of when they're landing, they have to go and land, next to their opponent or towards their opponent. They have to counterattack. They have to reverse this disadvantageous situation into something that, is advantageous. And if you really think about the ramifications of what that means in the context of the game theory, it's a totally illogical option. There's really no reason why you really should, when you're disadvantageous, you know, going for an advantageous position where you're hitting your enemy back or something like that. By and large, that's, you know, a very aggressive option, and if you look at risk-reward, technically the very aggressive, riskier options are the ones with the higher reward, yes, but they're also, you know, as I said, they're the riskier option. There's a reason why. You probably are going to get hit back if you just outright try to hit your opponent, because when you're in the air, another option that you don't have as well as shield is you can't grab in the air for the most part. So most characters, they are, if they just sit and shield underneath you, like if we're in this position and Diddy Kong just puts his shield up right here, I can hit him with a neutral air, beaten by shield, a landing up air, beaten by shield, a down air, beaten by shield, maybe try to cross him up and back air him, again beaten by shield, zair him, again beaten by shield. You kind of see a recurring theme here. All your aerial options for the most part are beaten by shield. So hitting your opponent and jumping into them when all they have to do is shield is very linear, very predictable, and very punishable. So I'm going to kind of suggest, if it kind of can help a player really break the bounds of what they do when they're in this disadvantageous position of trying to land, where you try to land has almost as much to do with the disadvantageous nature or the advantageous nature of the situation, just as much as the option you pick coming down. So if you want to look at it as a multi-tier choice selection mechanism, you first have to choose where you want to land as well as how you want to land. Let me try to explain it better. So let me move Diddy Kong over here for a second, and let's say we're trying to land and we're right here in this situation. So we're here and we're in trouble. There's a platform between us and Diddy, so if we're gonna aerial him, we're gonna have to commit, we're gonna have to land with the aerial. Diddy Kong, all he has to do is shield. A lot of the times you see people, they just try to land right here for some reason. I don't know why. It's like some sort of bright light flashing beacon. We must land near our opponent, and that, as I said, it's the aggressive option in this situation. You don't have to land there. If you have your double jump in this situation, you could always double jump out and change where you want to land, and moving, like, you know, in this kind of area right here. You can double jump anywhere over there if you want to. Alternatively, you have the option of not landing in this spot, but you can go right here, this guy. This is between the options of getting hit and trying to reset to neutral. The ledge granting you invincibility and giving you, you know, a place where your opponent really can't hit you. It's an option that a lot of players seem to forget exists, but it's a very, you know, very strong option in that situation. So you could always just go and just, you know, get to the ledge right there. There's no reason, you know, not to, outside of the fact now that you have to go from a landing situation into a edge guard breaking situation. But that's a lot of you know, that's a topic for another video. But don't be afraid to just, you know, pick the passive option. It's the low risk, low reward option where you're gonna give up landing on the stage for the invincibility and the resources and the refresher of resources. You know, your down special, your double jump, and some invincibility to just kind of run the clock out, stall a little bit, make your opponent kind of think about what you're going to do. Maybe even give yourself a chance to think about what you're going to do. You don't have to land right here and get, you know, grabbed and then up here by Diddy after you down throws you. You can always go somewhere else. Another thing that you can do in order to augment where you're going to land in, you know, this god-awful situation is, as I mentioned, you had your double jump still. You could also have Zero Suit. You know, she has a very special option that a lot of the, I guess, higher tiered characters as a general trait seem to have. You can use your flip jump to escape. Flip jump has some invincibility, and it also has a lot of mobility to it. So in that situation, if you have to choose between, you know, we're talking about high risk option, low risk, low reward option, And then you have also an alternative mix-up of flip jumping away over here. So now instead of just having only two options where you land there or you go to the ledge, your opponent also has to account for the third option of you flip jumping away. And there's this phenomenon in decision-making theory where if your opponent has to account for more options, their option selection inherently becomes slower because they have to consider, you know, the inherent risk-reward of multiple options as compared to just two of them. So your opponent really can't set up anything if they're really going to try to punish you that's too devastating if you kind of factor in all three of those things. So going back to what we're talking about, you have, if you're in this situation, you have the option of landing on the ledge, landing in front of your opponent trying to counterattack, or flip jumping away and trying to reset the situation to neutral. I don't necessarily know which one is inherently better, but I do know that having three options is definitely better than one, because typically in the game, if you have only one option, your opponent knows that. It's like the same exact thing as having no options at all, and having no options is the worst case scenario. Zero Suit Samus being a very mobile character, you're also able to augment where you're able to land by using special reversals. And if you're not familiar with what a special reversal is, I kind of talked about it in some of my last videos, but I'll kind of show you. If you hit special button, the specials, when you turn around and do a special, there's two, I guess, primary ways to change the direction you're facing. You're able to flick behind you and just turn around and shoot a special like that. You see how I'm facing right now. I'm going to jump to my left, or I'm going to jump to the right, and I'm going to face left by flicking behind me and shooting. And you can see my whole entire progression of motion is very, you know, very nice smooth arc that way, and then I end up shooting the paralyzer in that general direction. Okay. Now, another thing that you're able to do is what's called a special reversal, or a B reverse, some people call it. I don't like calling the moves by the buttons because people have custom controls like myself, and who knows what button I use especially. It could be something crazy like the A button. Another topic for another video. But you can see, like in the case of the turnaround where I just flick behind me and shoot, my momentum stays constant. I kind of go in that smooth arc. If you see how I did that in the special reversal, I hit the special button and then hit the analog input afterwards. It's like a 5-frame window or something like that. It's special. It's special then behind you, and you see how my direction when I make that input completely reverses, like almost instantaneously. So if we look at like kind of the arc that I made right there, rather than doing the arc of the smooth shot that way, I kind of went and then bounced off that way. So you can kind of see, let's say your opponent was right here, let's say the Diddy Kong was right in that direction, he'd have to choose, am I going to hit right or am I going to have to hit left to hit the opponent, just by nature of hitting the special button in compared to your analog stick in a different order. Again, giving you different options on where you land as opposed to you know, what option you commit to. Now, in terms of practical application, when we talk about using special reversals and landing, a lot of the times, because your momentum reverses, if you drift backwards and flick behind you after you hit special, you'll actually, you know, bounce the other way while facing the direction from which you came, so that if your opponent tries to counterattack you, they're going to run into a paralyzer if you do it right. A lot of times I like to fake, you know, with back, like I can sit here and back your wall, and people, oh, they're going to back your wall, and then you come back with a paralyzer like that. It kind of is a little mix-up to try to catch them trying to punish you a little bit off the back here. That's kind of how that works. You can also use it landing, so, you know, if you're up here and you want to like try to juke your opponent out, if you're landing, oh, I'm back here, and now I'm back to the ledge, and I paralyzer them. So, as I said, a lot of these options are just kind of to augment where you land as opposed to how you land. None of that doesn't even, like, you know, we haven't even really gotten into the, you know, whether we should come down with a hitbox or if we should come down with an air dodge with invincibility to try to, you know, bait what your opponent's, some sort of follow-up that your opponent's trying to make. All this is just talking strictly on where you land as opposed to how you land. So, to review again, land right in front of your opponent, probably a bad idea. Land at the ledge, flip jump away. If you want to, you can try to, you know, turn around, mix up turning around, or mix up reversaling. Either way, not a big deal. That's kind of like, you know, 5 different options that can really change where you land without even going into how you land. Now, this is where things start to get fun. Let's talk about options on how you land. So, let's say, for the most part, we know that Zero Suit likes to work off neutral air at the neutral game because of its walling capabilities and how relatively safe it is on shield. It's not perfectly safe if you don't space it correctly. Your opponent's able to shield grab technically, 'cause it's like -9 or 10 on shield. But it's safe enough if you get out of the shield grab range. So if you're able to drift away from your opponent, even if they shield, because shield does beat neutral air in terms of the game, you know, concept and design, you're still going to mitigate the punishments your opponent is able to get. This is opposed to, say, if you air dodge in front of your opponent and have all the lag, then you're going to get forward smashed by Diddy Kong, where down tilted into grab, into down throw, into up air, or into something just, you know, stupid. So by and large, air dodging into the ground in this game, we've kind of figured out, is not very good just because of the penalty associated with it. So landing with neutral air while drifting away while facing your opponent is a good option. On the flip side of that, let's say you're trying to land from your opponent, going away from them while you're facing away, and it's like the only option you have. In this case, I mean, it's pretty intuitive. Throw out back air as you land. In Brawl, Zero Suit's back air was the ungodliest landing tool, because it was coupled with doing flip jump off the ground, which is invincible on startup. So you had a -5 move, -5 on shield move technically, that you could couple with an invincible on startup option. Meaning that, in theory, if your opponent buffered a shield grab, even if you didn't space it, you would technically be able to get away from a shield grab, because grabs come out in 6 frames, and they'd only have 5 frames of advantage to grab you. But that's a lot of really complicated stuff that we really don't need to go into per se. It's good to know in concept, but it's a lot of, you don't need to know the frame data, just kind of know the feel. So by and large, if you're landing, and your opponent's going to beat your option by shield anyway, you kind of might as well throw it out. Throw out a hitbox just to keep them honest, just so that they have to put their shield up. Because if they put their shield up and you're far enough away and they can't grab you, they have to drop their shield and then move. And there's an inherent penalty, like when you drop your shield, you can see how long it takes for me to put my shield back up, or shield to dash. And at the same time, like things like dash grabs or anything like that, they take longer than just, you know, standard standing grabs for the most part in this game. So making your opponent go through an added layer of protection, while there's probably a counter to it in theory, it might be enough to where the execution barrier to punishing you is high enough that you're able to get away with things that you shouldn't technically be able to get away with. All that being said, we haven't talked about the other option really too much outside of don't air dodge into the ground, which is air dodge. What is air dodge for in this situation? In this game, in my opinion, air dodge, believe it or not, I think in the air is upgraded compared to Brawl. Brawl, you're kind of like in this lag time for over half a second, significantly over half a second, and you couldn't really do anything. And then you had Meta Knight, who had up airs that took like 15 frames or something stupid, and they could throw out 4 up airs and then shuttle loop you to death. In this game, there really isn't a character that kind of really has that. They can maybe throw out 1 aerial to frame trap and then hit you. And by frame trap, I mean when you air dodge, they throw out an aerial during the lag time of the air dodge. That's why you're invincible, but they're still returned to neutral in time where they can throw out another aerial to hit you out of the cooldown of air dodge. That's the concept of a frame trap. Zero Suits, if you do up air to neutral air, back air, trust me, it'll do some magic for you. Try it out sometime, or even down air. But what you can do in this game with air dodge, if you're going to be forced to, number 1 is time when you air dodge further away from the ground, so that there isn't a lag time associated with it. You can see I air dodge away. If my opponent were to say, you know, in this situation, if Diddy were to jump up here and try to aerial me, because I committed to air dodging earlier, I'm not going to have the inherent lag associated with jumping into the ground, at which case I might be able to, I'm not guaranteed, just kind of depends on how the frame data plays out or when he goes for the up air in the context of my air dodge. But I might be able to come back and just, immediately turn around and counterattack with a back air. That's supposed to be back air. I'm bad at buffering. Sorry, excuse my tech skill. But you kind of get the idea there. Overall, when you air dodge has a lot to do with it because you have your invincibility. Like having invincibility when you air dodge, if you have invincibility from here down to here, and then you still have your cooldown somewhere in here before you hit the ground, they can't hit you in this area if they jump up to up air you, like, how do I zoom in a little bit? Yeah, they can't really hit you in that area up here if you're air dodging. So it's a way to, like, it's kind of the higher risk, higher reward option where if you can bait them into overcommitting by trying to punish you with a short hop aerial or a full hop aerial, you're able to reverse the tables where now all of a sudden, if they go for the aerial, you're going to be on the ground and then they're going to be up here and now you're in the juggling situation. So that's the purpose of the air dodge. It's not something to just throw out over and over again in this game because of the landing lag. It's an option that's used as a reversal in the air to catch your opponent overcommitting on the follow-up game. At the same time, you're able to in this game too. It's a kind of a curious quirk on air dodging. When you air dodge into the ground, especially on platforms, if you air dodge into it, right, if you try to go backwards off a platform, you can't really do anything. You get stuck and you go into lag, and it's terrible. You see that? I'm trying to go off there, but if you go forward, oh god, I suck. All right, if you go forward off of it, you're able to slide off. You see how I air dodged and then slide off immediately. There's not as much inherent lag associated with it because for some reason you're able to slide off forward but not backwards. So the orientation of which way you're facing has a lot to do with the safety of air dodging into the ground, especially when platforms are involved. You're able to slide off forward and I could just, and then I should be able to back here there. Try to, like, if someone's chasing you and then you can try to bait them into air dodge and you can throw out a back air and hit them. You're gonna see I got back air out right there. Yeah, boom. You can hit your opponent with that. Back on the stage. So keep in mind too, like how you air dodge too. You can and then come up with an up air and reverse it. You can do all kinds of fun and janky stuff. Come down with paralyzer, reverse the paralyzer. You can do all kinds of, the mobility option, the mobility freedom of this game is one of the beautiful things, and it lets, people complain this game is very defensive. It's kind of because, you have a lot of free range of motion to do these defensive things to really minimize how hard you end up getting hit at the end of the day. One more option that you can think of, and this is something that we haven't really talked about too much. I mentioned at the beginning that you're able to double jump away from your opponent, and especially because you're Zero Suit Samus, I would advocate using that option first, the flip jump first, as your double jump away from your opponent, because when you flip jump, you only have a couple options. You can kick, flip jump kick, you can do nothing, or you can, let me see, try to footstool, which is, and inherently it's less than being able to special attack, air dodge, all those fun things that are associated with being in the air that we can use as tools to get back to the ground. At the same time, what happens is, as we mentioned, if everything's beaten by shield, and you still have your double jump in this situation, right, and we were talking about this, you're still in this situation, your opponent thinks you're going to land here, so Diddy Kong in this situation can just put his shield bubble up and block any option you have. Now, in the event that he's trying to punish you, from shield, the obvious punish and the fastest punish that most characters are going to have, and if you're not, Zero Suit Samus, Toon Link, or however with a tether grab, is just going to be to standing grab your opponent. And one of the options that you can try to get them to do is, if they think you're going to land there, you can fake going down like you're going to land at that spot right there, double jump back up, and then dare into them. Kind of a confusing diagram now that I look at that, but my artistry with the finger pad on my laptop. You're gonna have to deal with it, guys. So let me try to illustrate how that looks. So I'm gonna land and then I double jump and dare. What happens is, if they're cheating, like, and I say cheating, not like actually physically cheating in the game, but trying to get as much frame advantage as possible by already over-committing to the option, you're going to fake them out. They're going to think they're going to have a free grab with you landing there. You bait that with the double jump, and then you come in and dare them. So you're able to do that in that situation as a means of how you land. You're landing with a hitbox. Of course, there's all kinds of lag to it, so if they hold their shield, you're in a little bit of trouble. So you probably want to sell it by fast falling to there and make them, like, kind of surprise them and try to, you know, juke them into committing. But that's another option that you can throw out as a means of trying to get back to the ground, just going straight through them with a hitbox as well. And that's kind of a more, it's not higher reward, it's just it's kind of a feint option, it's kind of a bait and switch option that you can throw out as a means of getting back down. Because inherently speaking, you know, you have just as much, if not more, reward hitting them with a landing neutral air or something like that, or a back air or something like that. So it's not necessarily higher reward, but it is enough to get you back to the ground as a mix-up option, and it's one because if you double jump, then you're back in the air, and now you just don't have a double jump when you're trying to land. So you have one less resource and one less option as a means of getting back to the ground. The entire point of it is to try to retain as many options as you can. So, kind of in summary of everything that we covered, you want to talk about, by and large, it's okay to land away from your opponent. You don't need to come in and try to attack them on landing every time. That's actually, coming in and attacking them is the more aggressive, higher risk, higher reward option of it. It's okay to go to neutral, or it's okay to go to the ledge and refresh your resources and get invincibility for a ledge option. It's okay to flip jump away from your opponent and, you know, reset, trying to get back to the ground. It's okay to use your specials to try to juke them, especially if you can get them to commit running at you. Turning around in this game is a lot slower from run than anything else, so if you drift one way and then all of a sudden reverse back the other way, by getting them to commit to running, you're able to reverse behind them, and it really can just make that final punishment a lot more significantly difficult than anything else. And you don't even have to use Paralyzer, you can also reverse with Plasma Whip in this game. It's not inherently very good, but I think this move is terrible. They did a terrible thing to Paralyzer. But it's another thing, you know, reverse momentum. So you want to first really focus on where you land. And then after you focus on, you know, where you land, that might remove most of your problems landing, but if that's not enough and you want to get to even the more deeper, higher levels of the game, then you can start thinking about, you know, how you land. The final thing that I really want to talk about too is when you're landing, you don't have to commit to anything. Like, sometimes what'll happen is, let me kill Diddy here. People like to commit to options for no reason. If you want to, like, take this rabbit hole even further, okay, so Diddy Kong is going to throw me, and hold on. Using the gamepad, I'm only by myself here, guys. Sorry. Alright, so Diddy Kong throws me. Doing it right there is not a very good example, so I can't hit pause. So Diddy Kong grabs me, and he throws me, and now I'm in what's called the tumble animation, because in this situation, I just came out of hit stun. I haven't committed to any options. A lot of players will air dodge or throw out an aerial just to get rid of tumble, which in this game in particular, I don't think that's necessarily the best option to pick, because from tumble you're still able to attack. You're still, you know, you're still able to attack. You're still able to special. You're still able to double jump. So pretty much, and you're able to air dodge. So pretty much every option that you would have in the air anyway from tumble is still there. But one of the advantages of keeping tumble on in this situation is when you land, you hit the ground, you go into impact state. Impact state means that you're able to roll, get up, whatever you want to do in the tech chase situations. But what it does is, if you're able to tech, you have invincibility on tech right there. It's like an option. You're invincible on startup for tech, so it's pretty much, if your opponent's really trying to grab you or something like that in that situation, it's an option you can use that'll be able, high risk, high reward option where you're able to leverage invincibility really quickly to avoid whatever attack your opponent's throwing to hit your landing, and then you can come out countering. So you don't have to necessarily commit to even any hitboxes or air dodges or anything on how you land. You could do nothing, and then tech as soon as you hit the ground, you're invincible, and you can come out with something like that and kill them. It's kind of a, you know, that's like the high tier of the risk-reward scale of things. You have to really have the patience and the balls to, like, be willing to risk doing absolutely nothing and being so vulnerable to your opponent as you land. Then you can tech or tech roll with invincibility and then reverse the situation. But that's also another option to keep in mind for the, quote, how you land section. So you can land with a hitbox, you can land with a, you know, forward-facing hitbox, reverse-facing hitbox, use your double jump and dare. You can air dodge and try to leverage invincibility to reverse the situation. And then you can do absolutely nothing and then try to bait them into punishing you, and then try to catch them, you know, sleeping and hit them for trying to punish you in the situations. So a lot of that is just kind of leveraging different risk and rewards. Excuse me, guys, allergies. So I just spent, I don't know, about 25 minutes talking about just landing in the typical situation where your opponent's beneath you. So a lot of people kind of get frustrated. I can't really do anything to land when you have so many just different options just to at least, you know, your opponent's in the advantageous state, yes, but if they're going to kill you, they're going to have to earn it. And at some point, people are human. If they have to earn it and they have to work to really get the reward, they're going to make mistakes, and that's where you get yourself back into the game. So I guess the most important thing I can say is, when you're in the disadvantaged situation and trying to land, don't panic. Really use all of the options that the game has available to you, and that's controlling where you land as well as how you land. And doing that will kind of mitigate the damage that your opponent can do. Make them really, you know, spend a lot of mental energy to punish you as hard as they possibly can, and that might be enough to just turn the tides back into your favor, and you can go from being juggled to being the juggler, I guess. So, hope that information in this long lecture on how to land was kind of helpful to you. If you have any questions or any points you want to talk about, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm pretty good about responding to it if I see it. I'll also post this on Smashboard. Shoutouts to everybody that watches it. I love you guys. Keep chasing it. I'm done with this one.